And welcome back to Gordon Bennett TV here live from Montpellier. It's the 63rd Coupe du Monde, the World Cup of Gas Ballooning. We are into 65 hours and over 30 minutes since the launch. Can you imagine that? I'm joined by Ruth Wilson, back with us. Hi, Ruth.
Hello, lovely to be here.
It's great, isn't it? 65 hours in the basket. Incredible, isn't it, so far?
It is.
So as we stand right now, the order is Swiss 2 in the lead, just passed through 1,000 kilometres. And the big story is the next team's down to 6. There's only 70 kilometres between them. They are in. The race is on. Ruth, let's have a look at the screen and just see how they're all grouped together. We've got Swiss 2 there, down at the front, and the next group all together very close, only 70 kilometres between them.
It'll be interesting to see who may stay tonight and try to land tomorrow. That's the interesting story at the moment.
Yeah, going for that fourth night. Who's going to do it? Who's going to put down tonight? Don't miss a beat. Keep following all the tracking. It's available for you live.gordonbennett.aero. But we can see there this wind pushing them down. We caught up with our good friend from a couple of years back in Gruyere, Serge Guillaume. He's at the headquarters of Swiss 1. And we're live on the line with my good friend Serge Guillaume from the headquarters of Swiss 1. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Regan.
How are you, my friend? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. We are a bit tired because the night was very proving. Searching the good ways, the good attitude, the good track to avoid Munich.
So right now, as it stands, we've got the two Swiss teams in the lead. You must feel very good about that.
Yes, we are proud. But the German teams are not far away, and the French teams also not.
Yeah, it's quite a good grouping, isn't it? Everybody's quite close. You've all found the wind.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. It's a crazy run this year because the start was very slow, and we moved from the west to the east. And now we are all a bit tired.
Yeah, it's certainly a game of endurance for everybody involved. Tell me about your last 24 hours. What's been going on with you and the team there?
We were working a lot for searching the good winds to go from west side of Montpellier to the east part of Germany, crossing the Rhine river and valley, and then trying to avoid Munich airport because the authority was very hard on his decision. No crossing during activities. Many of the teams have reached their goals. We tried the option of the North way, and we are successful today, and we are very glad. But we are tired because we work hard all the night long.
Yeah, you guys have not had any sleep yet. I think there's a lot of people like that as well at this Gordon Bennett right now. Tell me about your team. Who's with you there in the office right now?
Right now, I'm quite alone because the teams had to go to recharge the batteries after this night, and they will come back this evening because we are not sure to go through the night, and we want to make a safe landing. Many options are open now, and we will discuss them at the end of the afternoon.
And let's just go back 2 years to when we met in Gruyere. How has it been for you since then?
It was very good, very good time in Gruyere, and then I had to make a lot of work to the job, and then last year I follow a Fribourg challenge in the backside, And this year I have the opportunity to co-lead with Vincent Ducrot the team in the headquarters of Fribourg Challenge. We are here in Givisier in Fribourg to follow the race. And I'm sorry, I apologize to Benoît Pellard. I was not aware to come in Montbéliard to watch the start and the Patrouille de France yesterday.
Are you going to be here at the end for the final awards?
I hope so.
We hope so too. It's great to be here in France. It really is an honour. The whole team are looking after us well. I just want to touch a little bit on these 2 years in Switzerland there with Gruyère and Bern. Do you feel there's been a legacy from those 2 years? Is there still an influence from that?
I think the experience is very important for all the people, for the teams, for the pilots, for the headquarters specialists who are working on several domains, and each course, each championship is another one. But the principle remains the same, and it's very important to gain this experience, to have then the opportunity to improve new strategies.
And what does it mean for you personally to be still involved in the Gordon Bennett?
For me, it's like a dream. It's like a dream because. For now 5 years, the Gordon Bennett is more and more on the scene, on the press, on the internet, present. Marc-André, Marcus, Agne are doing a lot of job to put this historical championship on the front of the scene, and I think it's very important to explain and to expose our culture of aeronautical and where we come from balloon, gas balloon, 1906.
Isn't
Paris,
it?
200,000 person in Paris. It was great. I wasn't there, but it was great.
200,000 people for the first ever Gordon Bennett. For you now, with your involvement the last few years, have you seen a change in the technology, or do you think it stayed the same?
I think the technology is growing more on internet, on helps with mathematical weather
predictions. Yes.
Our apps you use on internet.
Yeah.
But one thing remains the same. You can have all the aids. The only one, the truth, is only when you fly that you can measure if the reality is what the system said or not.
Yeah, that is true. That is a good way to end our chat for now, Serge. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you at the weekend.
Thank you too, and have a good time in France and Montbéliard. See you soon. Bye.
See you soon. It's always good to catch up with Serge. So, just want to turn that speaker down, guys, for me. Thank you very much. So, he was talking there about the first ever Gordon Bennett all that years ago. And we got a message come through from Pierre Kadoff. He says, how can I see the profile flown? Well, you go on to what we've got here. It's live.gordonbennett.aero. And then you can just follow the tracks. You can even click on it, and all the information's there. If we just highlight it, there you go, and you can see the altitude, you can see the speed, the flying, distance scored, and you can do that with all of them. If you want to do it on your smartphone, we've got the YB tracking. Just download the app, and it's all there, the YB tracking. So as Serge was saying about the history in the first ever Gordon Bennett, 200,000 people watching that launch. Ruth, you're a bit of an aficionado on the history of Gordon Bennett, are you?
Well, I've been involved with the sport for over 40 years, so I love it. And I really would have liked to have known Gordon Bennett He was the publisher of the New York Herald, but he was also a keen long-distance yachtsman. And so while he was born in New York, he spent most of his life in France. And he set up long-distance races for yachts, automobiles, and, of course, gas balloons. And the first flight, they flew 641 kilometres. It was won by an American. But in 2005, a Belgium team flew 3,400 kilometres. So there's quite a difference between what we've achieved in this long-distance race.
There he is, the man himself on the screen, Mr. Gordon Bennett. Do you know he's actually become, I don't know if it's in Australia, but in UK, his name is an exclamation.
I know, it isn't in Australia, but I've found it in the Northern Hemisphere. And he seemed like such a character. So people who do carry on with a lot of fun activities get called that in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, can you imagine that? You've lived such a wild life that 100 years down the line, people use your name as an exclamation. That's incredible. So there we go. Gordon Bennett started. Tell us a little bit about the history of this sport then.
Well, in 1995 was a mixed year. It's the year that Willie Imers and his partner Lansdowne flew for 92 hours in a basket, which in itself is an amazing achievement. Yeah. But it was also the year that the American teams flew into Belarus, and one of the teams was shot down by the Air Force, and we lost Alan Frankel and his co-pilot, Mr. Jervis. But the other two American teams, David Levin and Michael Wallace, were forced down also, but they survived. But a race such as this will always bring up some kind of a challenge, of course. And the thing that I find interesting is that there are more women coming into the sport recently. So we have, to my best of my knowledge, it's about 10 or 12 women who've embraced long-distance gas ballooning. 4 of them come from Australia, which I'm proud of. And it's Judy Lynn, Jenny Houghton, and Tanis McCarran, who flew with me last year. And I'd like to see that happen more, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere as well.
Yeah, we had a great interview with your good friend from Australia yesterday. It was a great report of his journey. It's been a 30-year dream, he's told us, to get to this race.
Yes, I've heard that story often. But the lovely thing is that with the technology today, this race becomes safer with this incredible support team on the ground and in the air. The history of the race is changing slightly, I think, from when they first launched with just a basket and an envelope full of hydrogen and took off. The men were dressed in long coats and a hat, a big top hat. Women were not considered in a basket. But those pioneers of the sport just launched in like explorers in the olden days. They just launched into the sky and went wherever their balloon took them. Yeah. And there's lots of lovely books to read about it. Just check in the libraries.
I've got some friends watching from my main sport of skydiving who are seeing gas ballooning for the first time, saying it's absolutely fascinating. They can't believe how incredibly exciting this racing is.
Well, it's only because we have the skill of the team here, a little bit last year, but definitely this year, and also social media. The images that SUI1 and Germany, Benny, they're all, these images they're putting on social media, on Facebook and wherever else, we're sharing them with the world, and the response and the warmth is just incredible because people, their eyes are being opened to the beauty you can see from a balloon basket, especially flying over cities like Munich and Stuttgart and wherever they are at the moment. I haven't caught up in the last hour, but fantastic images, and even using the sand shovel to throw out a little bit of sand. I mean, I've explained that to people in my talks at home, and I don't think they really understood it, but now they can see it because of the sharing of the guys. And I think it's wonderful that they've got the inclination and the time to do that in the basket.
Yeah, it really is. It's important these days. Get the message out there and make sure that everybody's watching, especially for the sponsors as well, to give the airtime. So let's go back a little bit for your ballooning story. How did you get involved in ballooning? Where did it all start?
I lived in Japan and worked as a journalist and moved to New Zealand in 1974. And I wrote an article for Clio magazine in Australia. They asked me to look for interesting men to interview in New Zealand. I was there a short time and I was introduced to a balloonist. I said, what's a balloonist? Because there were 2 pilots in New Zealand and 3 in Australia in 1974. So I interviewed him, and then eventually he invited me to go to the inflation of his balloon early hours of the morning. And as the trailer came around the corner with this wicker basket on it, I saw the wicker basket and thought, how romantic. And then when he turned the burner on, my fingers started twitching, and I knew this was what I wanted to do. Right. When he said, hop in, Ruth, I was in that basket, and as I lifted off, I knew I had found my destiny. And I feel privileged to have done that, to find that passion. And after 44 years, I still get as excited as the first day when I see a balloon or hop in a balloon or chase a balloon over here to Europe.
So after that first flight, when was your next flight? Was it the same day or was it a long time later?
No, that first flight, I had to return to Australia for 3 months. And then I flew back to New Zealand and did 4 flights with the one pilot there, and he signed off a piece of paper and said, you're now a pilot. But basically, when I look back now, it was pioneering stuff. I just went out and flew in conditions I wouldn't let my students fly in today. But that first flight, after 36 kilometres, and I landed, I didn't want to get out of the basket. And long distance ballooning was born then. I thought, I just want to fly all the way to Australia. So I just have a heart for the gas ballooning and for especially the Gordon Bennett. So,
what was your first introduction then into gas ballooning?
1985, I was hot air ballooning in Switzerland at a dinner with the hot air balloon pilots, and there was this lady sitting beside me. I didn't know who she was. And we talked, and her name was Regula Hugmesner. She was the doyen of gas ballooning in Europe in 1985, and she said, would you like to go for a gas balloon flight on Saturday? Well, I thought I'd won the lottery. And of course I did, and that was it. I came back each year in the 80s, 86, 87, 88, to fly with Regula. And even in the early 90s until she was no longer able to fly. But I think she flies with me when I'm in a gas balloon.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And when was your last flight on a gas balloon? When were you last up there?
Oh, last year's Gordon Bennett out of Bern, which was amazing. We launched, and I made the decision to go to Italy because I didn't want to work with the French ATC because I was a little nervous. I couldn't speak the language, but I loved it. You know, it was flying over the Alps. Very nice. It was really lovely.
And how did you decide what food you're going to take with you?
Well, I just chose what I like to eat. Just some avocados and grapes and nuts, basically. And but my mouth was so dry that I didn't really eat much because we were at 15,000 feet for 17 hours. And it was so cold. But it was an amazing experience. And when you do this, it stays with you and it transforms into your everyday life. And I'd love to do it again. And I'm looking at Poland, but coming from Australia with a team and, freight, airfare, accommodations, very, very expensive. That's why I think there was a relief from some of the pilots when the Australian team dropped from first to second. And the comments were made, we could never afford to get to Australia, but one day maybe.
Maybe. We've got some messages coming through from people watching. Let's have a look. Tobias Landsman says, it's a very exciting event. I'm happy to see and meet the Australia 1 team. And I'm just taking it up a little bit. Let's see. Several days ago he met them. They got their first contact with gas balloons and the Gordon Bennett. So that was Tobias, his very first contact with gas balloons, and now he's watching the action live.
It's lovely, isn't it? Yeah. And you probably got keen people in touch all the time, have you? You're getting to know them almost personally.
Well, kind of, yeah. People are sending us messages through 24 hours a day. People are watching the tracking, they're commenting on the videos, the live landing that we caught yesterday from Germany 3. We had hundreds and hundreds of people watching it as it was happening. And I think now, 24 hours later, it's had, I don't know, 6,000-7,000 views already.
It's amazing.
It's incredible how the reach it is out there. People are really, really enjoying it. So, Poland, are we thinking we're going to have another team from Australia from you, Ruth, perhaps?
Oh, we're going to try. We really are. So we can't say yes or no right now, but we're going to try. Yes, yes.
What would you say for anybody watching who wants to get involved in ballooning, just to take a hot air balloon flight and maybe gas balloon later? What should be their first step? What should they do?
Well, in the area, wherever they're living, they should check to see first if there's ballooning activity, if there's a club that they can join, or if there's only a commercial ride operator, they could phone them and at least go for a flight to see if they feel comfortable standing in the basket at altitude. You either it's not a grey, it's a black or white emotion. You either fall in love with ballooning or you don't with your first flight. So I would say before you got too enthusiastic about committing to gear, go for a flight, even if you have to pay for it with a commercial operator, and just see if it grabs your heart and your soul. And if it does, you'll find a way. You'll find a way.
And what about getting a flight in a gas balloon? Is that something which is commercially available to people?
Well, I don't know a lot about it because we don't have gas ballooning in Australia. We're just starting to get into the hydrogen industry just this year. So, but I know that here in Europe there are key areas where there is a lot of activity, and I guess they should just pick up the phone and all go down to the clubhouse and meet and start talking to somebody, because my belief is that anybody who chooses to live the sky, use the sky for their playground, have a beautiful warmth and caring and sharing personality. You have to be if you're going to be up there floating around with the stars and the wind and air. So people will open their heart, just have to ask.
That's right. Let's have a look. A couple of more messages coming through. Special thanks to the team at Gordon Bennett TV for the regular shows and information about the race. As Tobias, thank you, Tobias, for joining us. Sebastian Thierman, he said, a great compliment for your media work. Lots of us are all, but yeah, we don't want to hear about us. We want to hear about the teams and the pilots. But thanks for tuning in. We really do appreciate you joining us every day. Oh, Sebastian's on. Sebastian Eimers, he says, get your gas balloon flights today. Go to www.eimersballooning.de. So there you go. That's the answer to that question. He was fast. The star of yesterday, Sebastian. Well, I want a gas balloon flight. When am I going to get mine? I deserve one as well. I think I would like to have a go at some point. Oh, listen.
That's wonderful. Like there is a rule in the race that if the team or the basket touches water, they're disqualified.
Oh, yeah.
And as far as I know, it was just in the year 2000, a German team ditched into the North Sea because obviously they didn't make land. But yeah, generally the pilots got that ability to make the decision to land at the right time.
Well, we caught up with the headquarters of FRA1 a little bit earlier. Let's see what Guillaume had to say. So we're joined on the line by Guillaume at the headquarters of FRA1. Good afternoon, Guillaume.
Good afternoon.
Tell me where you are right now.
We are just leaving Austria, and we are trying to reach beginning of Hungary.
Yeah, a lot of teams all together in one place at the moment, yes?
Yeah, it's a very spectacular Gordon Bennett edition, because as we can see it in the official tracking, there was a lot of different strategy during the beginning of the flight. And finally, most part of the balloon joined the same track now around Vienna. and it's very interesting because there was a lot of different strategy. France 2 tried by the south with a patient strategy at the beginning of the race. They had a problem with Munich yesterday, so they had to land before, but we have still 2 balloons in the race.
And where actually are you, Guillaume? Where are you situated now?
The strategy team?
No, yes, where you are. What is your location? Are you in France? Or are you here? Are you here in Montpellier?
Yeah.
Or?
No. We are in France, near Metz, in the north of Montpellier.
And how long have you been involved in the strategy teams? Have you done many years before?
Yeah, I'm involved in this project for 6 years, and with a good action and main part with Nicolas and Antoine and Eric and Claude and a lot of people from 3 years now.
Yeah, it's a
4
big
years,
team.
sorry.
Big team, big team. You must be.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You must be very proud now to have the Gordon Bennett here in your own country.
For sure, we are proud because it means that we won it 2 years ago. So we are happy to see the Gordon Bennett beginning in France this year. And we are happy for the moment with the race. They do a wonderful flight with beautiful landscape over the Alps. And it's a good flight.
Well, thank you, Guillaume. I'll let you get back to your action, but thank you very much for joining us here on Gordon Bennett TV. It's always fascinating to see the headquarters and all the work that's going on behind the scenes, not only the people in the basket.
That's true. That's true.
So the Gordon Bennett, it's not been continuous, Ruth, has it, since the first? There was a break. What happened?
Well, the First World War happened, 1914 to 18. Then there was a break from 1932 through till 82, but it was resumed in 1983 in Paris. And so, except for 2 years because of bad weather, which was in 1987 and 2007, from memory, that was cancelled. But before that, they took them off in rain and snow and wind and in the early days.
Were you involved in the 80s when it came back, or was that before your time?
It was just before my time. It came back in 82, but I got involved in 85. So.
And do we know how it got back? You know, what was the...
Well, I do. I don't know the politics behind it, but an American gentleman he started the race in America, but it wasn't endorsed by the FAI. So they took hold of it and in their own way and have managed it and looked after it since 1983.
All right, and we've got the record for the Gordon Bennett. We know 3,400, but it's not the longest gas balloon flight. That was at the America's Challenge. What is it?
That Nicholas did recently.
The longest gas balloon flight. It was outside of the Gordon Bennett race, I believe.
Well, they took off from Albuquerque and landed up in Quebec. I can't really recall, but it was certainly over 3,400.
Yeah.
In the high 3,000s. I'm spending some time with Nicholas and his family next week, and I really want to hear the finer details of that flight. And yeah, that'd be exciting.
Good. Well, we'd like to hear that as well. Ruth, thanks very much for your insight and your time.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Easy to share what you love.
And we'll have you back in the studio before the end of our event here in Montpellier. Well, the pilots continue their odyssey, 66 hours now and counting. We'll be back at 6 p.m. with our next live update. We're going to leave you with these images from SUI1.